Alrighty, Colts Nation, happy Wednesday, assuming you're watching this, of course, on the day it's released. If not, happy whatever day it may be as you watch it. So today, as you saw in the title of the video, I wanted to take some time to go through a list of guys that I think have something to prove this season, right? Now, when I say something to prove, that can mean a number of things, but primarily, I'm referring to the fact that they either have to prove something to the Colts organization or they have to prove something to us, right? We, the people, Colts Nation, right? For the shoe. Me, you, the Colts fans that aren't watching this video right now, us, right? Now, every year the roster shuffles around, as do the narratives around each individual player on the roster. Every year is a unique year. That's kind of the beauty of sport, right? A fine example of this, recent example that all of you are going to know watching this is Paris Campbell, right? Where last season, a lot of us were viewing him as a guy that was going to be a breakout candidate for us. Now, obviously a tough year to produce for Indianapolis as a wide receiver, but Paris Campbell, despite playing pretty good, that was no breakout season, and now all of a sudden, fast forward one season later, and he is on the New York Giants, right? So even in cases where expectations and optimism are justified, things obviously can play out a number of different ways. Things move very, very fast in this league. So really the primary goal of today's show is simply going to be to lay out the context that each of these players are operating in and why I think they have something to prove to the Colts fans, the Colts, right? Colts everybody. Colts, the bubble, the Colts, whatever the Colts is, right? A team, a fan base, an organization, the whole deal. Colts, right? So let's get into it real quick. But before we do, just wanted to thank you so much for being here. Those of you who are returning listeners, really cannot thank you enough. Welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. Only thing I ask, well, I ask two things, really. In fact, I might even ask three. One, enjoy the video, right? Two, if you enjoy the video, just drop it a like. It's going to let me get out to as many Colts fans as possible. You know, obviously, I have my aspirations. I'm trying to take this thing real far. I'll be making videos about the Colts for such a long time that you're not even going to know what to do with me, right? So there's that. And if you want to be a part of that journey, of course, you can subscribe. But with that, why don't we get into player number one? And that is an obvious one in Michael Pittman, right? So I figured I'd kick it off with him just to get things flowing a little bit, right? And as a Colts fan, unless you're living under a rock, you're aware that this is a contract year for Michael Pittman, right? We all are. And the question that everyone seems to be raising is the same, which is, does he deserve that wide receiver one money? Now, what's that going to be? An $18 to $20 million contract, right? The thing with Michael Pittman is that we have a rookie quarterback, right? And Anthony Richardson, if he threw for like 3,500 yards, would be pretty good. So in terms of numbers, looking like a bona fide stud, number one wide receiver, right? Like making your fantasy team super happy. I don't really see that type of season for Michael Pittman. But for me personally, beyond kind of proving or getting his 1,500 yards or whatever it is, I really need him to show up off the field for this team. And I'm not saying he's been like a nuisance or a problem off the field. That's not what I'm implying. But when you look at the body language of this team last year, this offense, Michael Pittman has to know that he is one of the best players on this offense. All of you can say what you want about Michael Pittman. We don't have many weapons better other than Jonathan Taylor. I don't think we have a single weapon better, right? So when the offense is out of sorts and, the team morale isn't looking great, Michael Pittman is a guy you have to look to. And his body language wasn't great last year. And even though he didn't have a lot of drops on the season, he did have some inopportune ones in situations where you almost felt like he was like out of it because of the situation and just the disaster that were the Colts, right? So I think the Colts are really looking for that out of Pittman this year. I think they're going to give him a break on the numbers. I think if he can really come in and impose his will as a character, as a guy to galvanize the troops, as to be the leader of this wide receiver room, which generally speaking is all younger than him. The only one who might be older than him is who? Isaiah McKenzie. And I don't even know if that's true. They might be at the same point. Michael Pittman, unquestioned leader here in this wide receiver room, and he has to show up and do it, right? Especially when you consider the fact that a Jim Irsay, if the Colts were to not be good, may be enamored by the possibility of a Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Bringing back another former Colt into the fold. So Michael Pittman has that looming over his shoulders. He's got to prove the contract, but if he shows up this season, it's going to be good for Indy. It's going to be good for football. It's going to maybe be good for whoever's fantasy team decides to draft him. And yeah, that's it on Michael Pittman. So number 2, this is one I haven't really seen yet, but what about Matt Gay, right? This is another offseason where many of us felt that we let too many people go in free agency and didn't bring enough in, right? Now, our one big move was to bring in a kicker. Now, I'm not going to in fact, I can't. I'm not going to dismiss the importance of that position, right? And in fact, quite the opposite. So there is a reason that kickers are always the highest scoring players in the league. Now, some people would like to abolish kicking altogether. I happen to like it, right? Now, why I feel that Matt Gay has something to prove is simple. Chase McLaughlin had just had a fine year for us, right? Particularly after how much instability we'd been dealing with at that kicker position since Rodrigo Doinkenship, right? And not only is Matt Gay replacing Chase McLaughlin, but as I said before, he's essentially like the headline premier name of our free agent class. You could argue Samson Ebukam if you want, but Matt Gay was like the first one where it was like, pack a punch, we're getting Matt Gay, right? Now, of course, we know that Chase doesn't quite have the same pop on his kicks as Matt Gay does, right? If you've watched both of them, you can clearly see the difference in how big the leg is in terms of the power, right? But do keep in mind that Chase knocked down some really big kicks for us last year, right? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how it looks coming out, right? If you make the field goal, you make the field goal. And his numbers are his numbers, man. It's a mid-80s, right? Percentages, 83%, 85%. You can fact check me. Right around 75% from 50-plus yards. So while Matt Gay has been spectacular the past 2 seasons, do keep in mind that we're going into his 4th year, and his last team wasn't his first. Tampa Bay in his rookie year, he struggled. Again, you were able to see the big leg then, but he was released due to some level of inconsistency, right? Now, I'm definitely confident in Matt Gay, but kicker is a weird position on that front, right? Guys get into slumps, and they become very, very difficult to get out of. Becomes like a mental game, almost like a pitcher in baseball, right? Where you're off like a couple inches, and it could ruin your entire season. So if Matt Gay were to struggle, this signing could end up taking a ton of heat, particularly for those who are out there like Bargain Bin Ballard, our big splash as a kicker, the whole deal, right? You could kind of see some of the ingredients that would build in this stew, right? So while maybe Matt Gay is not the common choice on a list like this, I do want to point that out as something to monitor because I do think he has to come in this year and show up, especially because it seems like a lot of Colts Nation like Chase McLaughlin, and we're going to be chirping. We're an impatient fan base right now. The Colts, I don't feel like have a reputation for having a real restless fan base, but just with some of what we've been through in the past few years and what we've been accustomed to, I'm not sure if in my lifetime, which albeit not very long, but I've been a fan for like 20 years and tuned into other people's opinions for, I don't know, can't give a number, but 3, 5, 6 years. I've never seen us so restless before, right? So move on from Matt Gay. Go to number 3. Let's talk about Shaquille Leonard, right? And I never like to kick a guy while he's down. And I say that because for some reason, when I talk about Shaq on a list like this, it kind of feels like that's what I'm doing, is kicking him while he's down, particularly because what he has to prove or what we haven't seen out of him is pretty much injury related, right? That being said, if the title of the video is players with something to prove, is there any player on this team that has more to prove than Shaquille Leonard? I mean, who doesn't he have something to prove something to, right? Us, the fans, the organization, himself, right? You name it. I mean, unlike quite a few guys on this list, he's already paid, right? So when a team in the Colts lets a Bobby Okereke go, right? When he was spectacular for us last season, perhaps that's like a tell on how they feel about Shaquille Leonard's health, right? But again, with that confidence does become a level of pressure to deliver, particularly if you think about some of kind of the dark stuff he was saying last year. Almost kind of had that feel, not saying it's the same situation, all right, guys? I'm not talking down on him, but almost had that Andrew Luck feel to it, right? Where it's like, man, is this guy like in a place where he's just really tired of the injury bug, right? He's not sure if he could come back and play. Just some of the same types of things. You can go ahead and compare him if you want. So I have the utmost confidence in him to at least return to 75 to 80% of what he was. We'll see how this one goes, right? Obviously, we're all rooting for Shaquille, the linebacker, formerly known as Darius Leonard, right? But we're going to have to see how he does. He has a lot to prove. What's his contract? Is it, am I making up? Was it like 4 years, almost like $80, $100 million? It's something crazy, right? He's making a lot of money. And, the team's going to have to, see if he's healthy, because if he's not, it's not going to be easy to trade him when that time comes, right? You talk about at the top of the show, narrative shifting and things like that. Right now, this is the year that Shaquille can make the shift from, right? Depending on how it goes this year, it can either be that the injuries become a thing of the past, or it becomes what defines him. So that's what's on the line this year for Shaquille Leonard. And I really hope it works out. So number 4, another guy that a lot of people are talking about for obvious reasons, right? Ryan Kelly. Very simply put, Kelly needs to play how he did before those unfortunate circumstances hit, which of course I'll leave alone. You can look them up if you like, right? I'm not holding that against him, of course. And congrats to him, by the way, on the kid he has coming up. Very, very happy to see that. But Ryan Kelly went from one of the best centers in football to practically a liability in what seems like overnight, right? And again, you have to assume that on some level he's been distracted because of what I was talking about before. But when you go from the level he was playing at to seemingly looking like you really don't know how, or don't know how to play, or you want to play, you get what I'm trying to say. I don't know if it's a communication thing or what, man, but Ryan Kelly was looking lost at times. I mean, there's times you're like, dude, not for anything, what are you doing out there? I mean, I feel like Danny Pinter was better than him at center his times, right? And you have rumors of him being on the trade block this offseason. And I'm not sure if that was a rumor. That might have been legit. But point being is Chris Ballard basically said, no, we're keeping him. It seems like the play of Ryan Kelly this year is almost going to certainly dictate whether or not he's in an Indianapolis Colts uniform next year. So let's see how it goes. I have faith, but if I were to bet I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to leave that alone and just move on to number 5. Let's talk about Kenny Moore. I wonder if any of you could guess what I was just about to say, by the way. But regardless, Kenny Moore, another guy, really disappointing last year, right? Ended up on those trade block talks with Ryan Kelly. And you look at the Colts' current cornerback situation. Need we mention Isaiah Rodgers, right? We're already thin at the position. We got Juju Brents, who missed some reps early on with an injury at corner. We're very, very young here. We did draft 3 guys, but this is a very, very unproven room, right? It is time for Kenny Moore to earn his, right? I love Kenny Moore, man. I really do, right? And watching homegrown talent blossom is always really a beautiful thing to watch. I feel like they always just become our favorite players, right? These hometown guys, right? But the reality is that Kenny Moore made this big stink about his contract coming into the season last year. And that was following the abysmal end to the season that the Colts defense had. When you talk about that game, were they Las Vegas yet, or were they still Oakland? The Raiders, right? And then that horrible, horrible PTSD-inducing weekend in the last season in Jacksonville, or were we at home, right? Does it even matter? So if he doesn't want to come out of this entire situation looking like a prima donna and a fool, which, let me clarify, by the way, is not what I'm saying he is. I'm talking about general public perception. You see these people online, they're just hurling insults at whoever's willing to listen, right? So it's time for him to show us who he is. And why not that long ago, many considered him to be the top nickel corner in football. Kenny Moore, we're looking at you, particularly in a year where I'm concerned about the defense. I'm looking at Kenny Moore. If he comes back to form, all of a sudden this defense isn't quite as worrying as I think. But if Kenny Moore is the Kenny Moore of last year, Colts are maybe in a world of trouble at defense. That's a conversation for a different day. So on to the next. Speak of that defense. What about Kwity Paye, right? Former first rounder, tough time staying on the field, and seemingly another whiff at pass rusher for Chris Ballard so far, right? Which is exactly what is on the line this season. That's exactly what he has to prove. They let Yannick Ngakoue walk, and in typical Ballard fashion, for better or for worse, he's betting on his guy, right? He put a first-round pick into Kwity Paye, and he's going to go down with the ship if that's going to be what it is, right? Now, I'm rooting for Kwity Paye here, but we are headed into what? Year 3, right? And I still feel like I have not seen enough of him and in turn from him to even have a real strong opinion that I could like put a stamp on about him, But boy, I mean, he does look the part physically. And it's in preparation of this episode, I saw he had 6 sacks in 12 games this past season, which on paper is not really bad at all. But I don't even recall seeing any of those. Am I forgetting a game that Kwity Paye had for us that was super impactful last year? Somebody let me know, because I might just be wrong on the Kwity Paye one. Listen, I am prone to a mistake here and there, but For me, Kwity Paye is a guy. I mean, can someone step up at the pass rush? We drafted you in the first round. Not that all the other first rounders from that one are doing great, right? But the kid in the Bills has flashed tremendously. He's a Greg Rousseau, right? So that is what it is. Now, on to number 7, the final one, and then I'll wrap up the video for you, give you your time back, right? You look at how the Colts approach safety this offseason. Again, just another case of Ballard really putting faith in his guys. Now, Julian Blackmon is a guy that he's putting his faith in. Now, how you feel about Ballard doing that is also a separate discussion, and may end up, by the way, and I love Chris Ballard, may end up being one that needs to be had when the time comes, but we'll worry about that later on. Now, Julian Blackmon, obviously explosive as a rookie, right? I mean, really, really, really special. And maybe it was even the defensive rookie of the year up until he tore his Achilles in, it was like the midway. It was around the midway point in the season, right? Call it week 8. Don't feel the need to fact check me there. Now, what a difficult injury that is to come back from. I know intimately. I'm literally dealing with one right now. You see the crutches behind me, right? I'm in month 5, for those of you who don't know. For those of you who've already heard me say it, you're like, Justin, stop saying it. I got you, but we have new people here, right? Now, the down play last year is to be expected given that injury, but late season, he did do a really, really good job filling in for Kenny Moore in the nickel against the Vikings. And you say what you want about the second half of that game, and you're justified for it, but go ahead and watch the first half and tell me that Julian Blackmon wasn't spectacular in that game, right? And now he is in a spot where he is the veteran of the room at the ripe age of 24 years old. I mean, they are relying on him to take charge and be the leader of this room, with Rodney Thomas, of course, alongside him, Nick Cross there to boot, right? And Daniel Scott's injury, obviously the rookie we drafted 5th round, right? If you haven't heard, that injury only makes the need for Julian Blackmon to perform even stronger. Now, I really wish this team would have kept Rodney McLeod. I wished that before the injury. I've been saying that since the start. He wasn't even expensive to keep. One thing like a guy like Okereke, where you let him walk because he's getting paid. But then it's another thing with McLeod, who signs for like $2.5 million. How much money do we have on the cap? $20-something million? $40-something million? I mean, that's besides the point. But this room right here, I mean, it's a thin room. This is an injury away from having Trevor Denbo on deck, all right? Which, no disrespect to you, Trevor. That doesn't exactly sound ideal for me, a Colts fan, from the outside looking in. I'm sure you're putting in your work, brother. I'm sure all of it's going on. But what do you want from me, the fan, what I've seen, right? So I would not be surprised to see them add someone here, and we'll go from there. Even if they do add someone here, Julian Blackmon is still going to be the leader of this room. Has something huge to prove. Hoping that rookie year wasn't a one-hit wonder. Torn Achilles is the type of injury very hard to come back from. Potentially never the same, but you're better off having it early than late in your career, that is, of course. So with that, that's the episode. Those were all 7 guys that I feel needed to prove something this year. There's more, of course, but those are the ones I chose. If you made it this far, thank you so much, always, for the support. Mwah, mwah. Was that weird? I'm probably never going to do that again, but if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and shoot it a like, shoot a subscribe, follow me for the journey, all that shit. And until next time, my name is Justin, which I don't think I said at the top of the show, but now you know. And this right here is the Ride in the Bench Colts cast. I mean, hey, I guess it is up there, right? So what are you going to do?